Forget everything you think you know about ancient history, because right now, sitting in the vast blue expanse of the Bay of Bengal, there is an island, a tiny, menacing jewel called North Sentinel that holds the oldest, most tightly guarded secret of human existence. I have spent years studying lost civilizations, but nothing prepared me for the timeline of the Sentinelese. They are not merely an ancient tribe, they are a living, breathing time machine. Think about this. When the pyramids were being built, when the Roman Empire was rising and falling, these people were already here. Scholars estimate they have lived on that single, forested patch of land for over 50,000 years. 50,000 years of continuous, unbroken isolation. That makes them one of the oldest human populations on Earth. Their journey likely began when they walked out of Africa, following the coastlines until their ancestors found this paradise, and then never left. Isolation is the greatest shaper of culture. Imagine the purity of a lineage left untouched by every major civilization, every religion, every war that defined the rest of human history. This is where the mystery deepens. The rumor, whispered among intrepid explorers and serious anthropologists alike, is that the Sentinelese are the direct descendants of the very first wave of humans to leave the African continent. They might preserve genetic traits, physical characteristics, maybe even a fundamental way of thinking that the rest of us lost millennia ago. Picture them, small, fiercely muscular, moving like phantoms through the dense canopy, living in simple, elegant huts under a sky that has watched 500 centuries pass. We look at their distinct language and their unique stone tools, and we are staring directly at the dawn of our species. What happens to the human mind when it faces no outside influence for that long? What forgotten wisdom do they possess? This much is clear. The history books we rely on are missing a critical chapter, and that chapter is guarded by the arrows of the Sentinelese. But if they are so ancient, so pure, why is the first thing they do when they encounter the modern world try to kill us? That is the deadly question we tackle next. The theater for this 5,000-year-long drama is, deceptively, a paradise. Let's zoom in on North Sentinel Island. It is not some vast continent. It's tiny, measuring only about 20 square miles, roughly the size of Manhattan if Manhattan were entirely covered in impenetrable, suffocating jungle. It sits, a hostile green fortress, in the middle of the Bay of Bengal. But what truly protects it is not military might, it's pure, brutal nature. The island is completely encircled by a treacherous, shallow barrier of jagged coral reefs. These reefs are essentially nature's minefield. They tear apart boats and swallow ships whole, making any direct approach from the sea almost impossible. The pounding surf only adds to the chaos. This environment is precisely what has kept them alive, thriving, and unseen. The Sentinelese are textbook hunter-gatherers, and the island is their supermarket. The dense rainforest provides all the raw materials they need, wood for their sophisticated bows, vines for their homes. But look to the shores. The lagoon and the shallows are teeming with fish, crabs, and shellfish, their primary food source. They are masterful fishermen, adept at navigating the choppy waters in their outrigger canoes. And here is a fascinating twist. While they are technically Stone Age, they have adapted. Over the centuries, the treacherous coral reefs have claimed ships, big, modern vessels. The Sentinelese have scavenged these wrecks, pulling out iron and metal to forge their arrowheads and tools. They are repurposing our refuse into their deadly technology. When you try to imagine being there, think intense humidity, the pervasive smell of salt and rotting leaves, and a constant suffocating quiet broken only by the crash of the ocean. The canopy is so thick, so dense, that it acts as a perfect natural shield, hiding their simple villages from any aircraft or satellite. The indigenous people on the neighboring islands speak of North Sentinel with dread, calling it cursed, protected by ancient, furious spirits. And perhaps they are right, because the moment that protection fails, the moment an outsider crosses that reef line, the world discovers just how terrifying their isolation truly is. It's time to talk about the weapons they use and how they turned a humble bow and arrow into the most effective defense system in the world. If you could parachute onto North Sentinel Island without immediately being shot, you would witness a life frozen in deep time, a perfect, self-sufficient hunter-gatherer existence. The Sentinelese are the ultimate survivalists. Their day revolves around the rhythm of the tides in the jungle. They fish expertly in the lagoons using long spears and sometimes nets, navigating the shallows in their narrow outrigger canoes. On land, they forage for jungle fruits, roots, and wild honey, moving with an intimate knowledge of every plant and shadow. They are true masters of their environment. Their dwellings are utterly simple, small communal huts built from palm leaves and forest materials. They wear minimal clothing, mostly belts and headbands woven from bark or fiber, sometimes adorned with shells. This simplicity, however, masks a sophisticated understanding of survival and engineering. I want to destroy the myth that they are primitive. Yes, their technology is fundamental, but it is constantly adapting. We already discussed the shipwrecks. That scavenged metal is the key. They take chunks of salvaged iron and patiently hammer it into razor-sharp, durable arrowheads. This means their technology, while basic, is more efficient and more lethal than it was 1,000 years ago. They are an adaptive Stone Age culture. Smugglers who have skirted the island report seeing strange fires and hearing rhythmic chanting, hinting at complex rituals and a strict social code that governs the tribe. Their society is likely egalitarian, though observers speculate that certain individuals, perhaps elders or the most skilled hunters, hold great respect. Gender roles are probably defined but highly cooperative. The men hunt and protect, the women gather and nurture. But the one role shared by absolutely everyone, regardless of age or gender, is that of the guardian. Their entire society, their entire worldview, is oriented around one single, terrifying objective: absolute, uncompromising solitude. They don't just defend their home, they defend their history, their lineage, and their 50,000 years of silence. This isn't just about protecting resources, it's about existential defense. And that defense has, famously, turned lethal. The question is, who were the victims that solidified their reputation as the world's most dangerous people? Let's trace the history of bloody contact. For tens of thousands of years, the ocean was their perfect moat. But the modern world, especially the expanding British Empire, refused to acknowledge boundaries. The first truly documented disastrous contact happened in the late 1800s. A British colonial officer named M.V. Portman actually landed on the island, captured 6 Sentinelese individuals, 2 elders and 4 children, and took them to the nearby capital of Port Blair. The elders quickly fell ill and died. The 4 children were sent back with gifts. This was not a friendly gesture. It was a profound, violent trauma. You cannot take the leaders and children of a Stone Age tribe and expect them to welcome you back. After that, contact was defined by hostility. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, the Indian government mounted expeditions, often led by the renowned anthropologist T.N. Pandit, attempting to establish rapport by leaving gifts, coconuts, bananas, and sometimes even pigs. These attempts were usually met with immediate, concentrated violence. I remember reading one official report from a 1987 expedition. An anthropologist and his team approached the shore in a small dinghy. They left offerings on the beach, but instead of approaching the food, a group of warriors emerged from the jungle, bows drawn. One particularly memorable moment, A warrior, standing ankle-deep in the water, raised his bow and fired. The arrow, tipped with scavenged metal, missed the official by inches, planting itself deep into the hull of the boat. The message was clear: stay out. Then there was the incident in the 1990s when a team delivered a large pig as a gift. The Sentinelese shot the pig with an arrow, killed it, and then buried it on the beach, seemingly as a sign of complete rejection of the offering and the outsiders. They don't want our food, they don't want our technology, they want us gone. Their hostility isn't irrational. It's a calculated, effective self-defense mechanism honed over centuries of watching the outside world encroach. Some scholars believe it's a trauma response inherited from that deadly 19th century encounter. Others believe it's pure cultural isolationism, the belief that their existence is paramount and must remain untainted. Every attempt at contact ended the same way, with a volley of arrows. But in 2006, the consequences turned from intimidation to outright murder, confirming the tribe's deadly resolution. What happened when the modern world accidentally stumbled onto their shore? The world finally took the hint. After decades of failed attempts at contact and countless arrows fired, the Indian government made a monumental decision: isolation is protection. In 1956, they officially declared North Sentinel Island a tribal reserve. This wasn't about protecting the land, it was about protecting the people from us. Why? Because the Sentinelese have zero immunity to modern diseases. A common cold for me or you could wipe out their entire population, erasing 50,000 years of history in weeks. To enforce this, they established a strict exclusion zone, 3 nautical miles of absolute no-go area around the island. This zone is patrolled by the Indian Navy and Coast Guard. If you cross that invisible line, you are committing a serious crime. They are not just legally isolated, they are militarily quarantined. It's an extraordinary paradox. The law protects their sovereignty by essentially forbidding any attempt to save or civilize them. Think about the ethical debate this creates. Should we forcibly integrate them, maybe even vaccinate them, to protect them from future accident? Or do we respect their choice to live completely free, even if that choice means they could perish from a flu virus? The global consensus, thankfully, leans toward respecting their freedom. Despite the legal barriers, the lure of the forbidden is too strong for some. There are constant rumors of illegal activity, smugglers passing too close, rogue fishermen trying to poach in their rich waters, and even sensationalist journalists attempting covert incursions. The island remains an irresistible magnet for those who wish to prove they conquered the unconquerable. But the most compelling and tragic proof that the exclusion zone is necessary came in 2006 when 2 unlucky fishermen drifted too close. Their deaths sealed the island's reputation as the deadliest place on Earth. And then there was the arrival of the American missionary, who dared to challenge 5 millennia of isolation. The story of John Allen Chau changed everything. In 2004, one of the most powerful natural disasters in recorded history, the Indian Ocean tsunami, slammed into the coastlines of Southeast Asia. Waves the size of office buildings devastated nations. The Andaman Islands, where North Sentinel sits, were right in the path of the destruction. When the massive wave struck, experts feared the worst for the Sentinelese. This small, low-lying island, home to an entire population with nowhere to run, should have been completely submerged, the tribe wiped out. But what happened next was nothing short of miraculous, a powerful testament to their 50,000 years of accumulated knowledge. Shortly after the tsunami hit, the Indian Coast Guard sent a reconnaissance helicopter to assess the damage. What they saw defied belief. The Sentinelese had survived, and they were not grateful for the intervention. As the helicopter hovered precariously above the dense tree line, a small group of warriors emerged onto the beach. One man, stripped down and utterly defiant, raised his long bow toward the massive, churning metal bird. He shot an arrow directly at the helicopter. Think about that moment. His entire world had just been ravaged by a catastrophe of biblical proportions, yet his immediate instinctive response to the outside world, even one that might have been bringing aid, was pure hostility. How did they survive? The scholarly speculation is beautiful. They must have been warned, not by a weather forecast, but by the subtle, perfect signals of their environment. Perhaps they felt the pre-shocks, or maybe they recognized the sudden, massive recession of the tide, the sign that a giant wave was coming. They knew the island well enough to race to higher ground immediately. It's almost mythic. 50 millennia of harmony with nature allowed them to cheat the tsunami. While modern civilization was caught completely off guard, the Stone Age managed to read the mood of the planet and survive completely on their own terms. It's a humbling thought, isn't it? Their survival cemented the legend that the Sentinelese are not just ancient, but utterly formidable. Yet, nothing could prepare the world for the defining event that was about to unfold, bringing an end to their global anonymity. We must talk about the tragic last visitor, John Allen Chau. The 2004 tsunami was a test of the Sentinelese's resilience against nature. The modern era provides a far more insidious threat, the virus of recklessness, fueled by social media. The world was horrified, but perhaps not surprised, by the tragic death of American missionary John Allen Chau in 2018. But that event, thankfully, didn't stop the traffic. It merely solidified the exclusion zone. Then, in March of 2025, a new brand of brazen ignorance landed on their shores. I'm talking about Mikhailo Viktorovich Polyakov, an American influencer. His motive was not missionary work or anthropology, it was clicks. He paid local fishermen a huge sum of money to illegally breach the exclusion zone. He landed on the shore with the sole intention of filming the encounter. This man left offerings, a coconut, and, unbelievably, a can of cola. A brightly colored aluminum can of modern sugar water left on a beach where life has remained unchanged for 50,000 years. The Sentinelese refused the offerings, but the damage was already done. Polyakov's brief illegal foray exposed the tribe to every pathogen he carried. Even if he only had a common cold, he could have ignited a demographic catastrophe, wiping out a lineage that survived the Iron Age, the Black Plague, and the 2004 tsunami. The Indian authorities were swift. Polyakov was intercepted by the Coast Guard, arrested, and faced serious criminal charges for violating the protection of Aboriginal tribes regulation. This incident sparked a global firestorm. How much is a viral video worth? Is any amount of fame worth the destruction of an entire, unique human population? This incident exposed the greatest modern threat to every uncontacted tribe, the relentless human desire for exploitation and the hunger for fame. It forced a conversation about ethics, not just of explorers, but of every single person who picks up a camera and violates a sacred boundary. Because while the Sentinelese have survived ice ages and massive waves, they are utterly defenseless against bacteria and the desire for social media attention. So, how did they manage to survive the most famous and tragic intrusion of all, the one that cost a young man his life? We must break down the John Allen Chau incident, the most detailed encounter we have, and the last time anyone stepped onto that forbidden beach. The very word Sentinelese conjures up immediate, visceral images: savages, cannibals, the last remnants of a dark, primitive age. This is the narrative built on fear and centuries of misunderstanding. Let's start with the oldest and most persistent lie. In the 13th century, the great Venetian traveler Marco Polo sailed past the Andamans. He wrote that the islanders, likely not the Sentinelese specifically, but related tribes, were a most cruel and brutal race who eat everybody that they can catch. Cannibals. That myth has clung to the region for 700 years, fueling exploitation fantasies and dread. But there is zero evidence that the Sentinelese are cannibals. Their violence is tactical. It is a calculated defense, not a ceremonial meal. They are not bloodthirsty savages. They are fiercely protective homeowners. I also want to challenge the idea of them being primitive. Yes, their tools are elemental, but the term Stone Age is simplistic. It implies they are stuck in the past, incapable of change. But remember the repurposed metal arrowheads? That shows ingenuity. That shows adaptation. They are living a perfect, sustainable life in harmony with their environment, which is far more sophisticated than our resource-gobbling modern existence. Their hostility, which is the root of most misconceptions, is not arbitrary. If a giant metal drone flew over your house or strangers continuously tried to breach your gates, your reaction would eventually turn violent. For the Sentinelese, every encounter with the outside world has brought either trauma, disease, or death. Their aggressive rejection of the modern world is perhaps the most rational choice any society has ever made. It's cultural preservation executed with absolute commitment. The tragic reality is that our misconceptions have shaped our behavior, encouraging explorers and fanatics to treat them as an artifact to be captured, studied, or converted, rather than as a sovereign nation to be respected. But one name cut through the myths and brought the Sentinelese story into millions of homes: John Allen Chaw. And his attempt to preach peace was met with a brutal, clear message. We need to detail the events of 2018 and understand exactly what happened on that beach. What does the future hold for a people who reject the very concept of the future? The Sentinelese face a paradox. They have survived 50,000 years of natural change, but they might not survive the next 50 years of human intrusion. Activist groups like Survival International argue fiercely that the tribe's wishes for isolation must be respected absolutely, defending their fundamental right to self-determination, even if that means living without modern medicine or communication. But even with the strict 3-mile exclusion zone, threats loom larger than ever. Climate change is perhaps the most existential danger. North Sentinel is a low-lying island. Rising sea levels and more powerful storms could render their haven uninhabitable, forcing them to relocate and inevitably make contact. Then there is the persistent, reckless threat of illegal contact, the Polyakovs and Chows of the future. As technology advances, as drones and faster boats become cheaper, the temptation to breach the forbidden zone will only increase. We are left with profound ethical tensions. Is it ethical to leave them completely alone, knowing that one small disease could erase their entire population? Or is it ethical to intervene, violating their sovereignty in the name of safety? The global consensus currently favors non-intervention. But this requires a radical shift in our own thinking. We need to actively protect their isolation. This means zero contact, stronger enforcement, and perhaps non-invasive digital monitoring, not of the people, but of the environment, to detect illegal intrusions or major climate threats. We need to create the perfect bubble around them. The Sentinelese are the living embodiment of human resilience and sovereignty. They are not merely an ancient curiosity. They are a vital key to understanding who we were and perhaps who we could be again. We have explored their history, their home, and their deadly defense. Now we must synthesize the ultimate lesson. What is the final, astonishing truth we learn from the people who refuse to be found? This leads us to our final takeaway. We have traveled through 50,000 years of silence, tracing the history of the one people on Earth who never asked to be found. The story of the Sentinelese is terrifying, tragic, and ultimately incredibly profound. What do these guardians of the last frontier teach us? Humility. In a world obsessed with growth, integration, and technological superiority, the Sentinelese demonstrate that perfect self-sufficiency is possible. They have survived every challenge thrown at humanity, plagues, empires, tsunamis, by remaining small, focused, and utterly free. They have nothing of our world, yet they lack nothing essential. That is a sobering lesson for our hyper-connected, hyper-stressed modern society. They also teach us the ultimate meaning of sovereignty. Their arrows are not just weapons, they are legal documents, historical declarations, and absolute statements of independence. They are demanding the fundamental right to exist on their own terms, without intervention, conversion, or exploitation. Their existence challenges the very notion that the path we have taken, globalization, industry, consumerism, is the only path or even the best path. The Sentinelese are a living, breathing testament to cultural diversity, a priceless historical artifact that we must preserve, not in a museum, but right where it belongs, free and thriving. Imagine them tonight as the sun dips below the Bay of Bengal. The dense canopy darkens, and the scent of salt and earth hangs heavy in the air. Out on the coral reef, the figures of the warriors stand watch, bows drawn, their posture unchanged from the dawn of time. They will remain unseen, untouched, and undiminished. They are the keepers of one of humanity's last great secrets, the final frontier of isolation. And it is our duty, our greatest responsibility, to ensure that their quiet, unbroken story continues for another 50,000 years. What did you learn from the Sentinelese? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you believe that respecting the sovereignty of uncontacted tribes is essential, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most fascinating and forbidden histories. Thank you for watching.